Reflections. No ground beneath our feet. Excerpts from Letters and Papers from Prison by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. One may ask whether there have ever before in human history been people with so little ground under their feet. People to whom every available alternative seemed equally intolerable, repugnant, and futile, who looked beyond all these existing alternatives for the source of their strength, so entirely in the past or in the future, and who yet, without being dreamers, were able to await the success of their cause so quietly and confidently. Or perhaps one should rather ask whether the responsible thinking people of any generation that stood at a turning point in history did not feel much as we do, simply because something new was emerging that could not be seen in the existing alternatives. The great masquerade of evil has wrought havoc with all our ethical preconceptions. This appearance of evil in the guise of light, beneficence, and historical necessity is utterly bewildering to anyone nurtured in our traditional ethical systems. But for the Christian, who frames his life on the Bible, it simply confirms the radical evilness of evil.
We have a golden opportunity to seize something good from this crisis. Its unprecedented shockwaves may well make people more receptive to big visions of change. And as we move from rescue to recovery, we have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again.
The failure of rationalism is evident, with the best of intentions, but with a naive lack of realism. The rationalist imagines that a small dose of reason will be enough to put the world right. In his short-sightedness, he wants to do justice to all sides, but in the melee of conflicting forces, he gets trampled upon without having achieved the slightest effect. Disappointed by the irrationality of the world, he realizes at last his futility, retires from the fray, and weakly surrenders to the winning side.
We should use this as an expression of the transition of one world to another world.
Worse still is the total collapse of moral fanaticism. The fanatic imagines that his moral purity will prove a match for the power of evil. But like a bull, he goes for the red rag instead of the man who carries it, grows weary and succumbs. He becomes entangled with non-essentials and falls into the trap set by the superior ingenuity of his adversary. Then there is the man with a conscience. He fights single-handed against overwhelming odds in situations which demand a decision. But there are so many conflicts going on, all of which demand some vital choice, with no advice or support save that of his own conscience, that he is torn to pieces.
Death is basically just a technical problem, not a metaphysical issue. People die not because the gods said so. People die because their heart stops pumping blood, or because an artery is clogged, or because there are cancerous cells in the liver, or whatever. These are all technical problems. And the idea of science is that every technical problem has a technical solution.
Evil approaches him in so many respectable and seductive guises that his conscience becomes nervous and vacillating, till at last he contents himself with a salve instead of a clear conscience, so that he lies to his own conscience in order to avoid despair. For a man whose only support is his conscience can never realize that a bad conscience may be stronger and more wholesome than a deluded one. When men are confronted by a bewildering variety of alternatives, the path of duty seems to offer a sure way out. They grasp at the imperative as the one certainty. The responsibility for the imperative rests upon its author, not upon its executor. But when men are confined to the limits of duty, they never risk a daring deed on their own responsibility, which is the only way to score a bullseye against evil and defeat it. The man of duty will in the end be forced to give the devil his due. What then of the man of freedom? He is the man who aspires to stand his ground in the world, who values the necessary deed more highly than a clear conscience or the duties of his calling, who is ready to sacrifice a barren principle for a fruitful compromise, or a barren mediocrity for a fruitful radicalism. What then of him? He must beware lest his freedom should become his own undoing. For in choosing the lesser of two evils, he may fail to see that the greater evil he seeks to avoid may prove the lesser. Here we have the raw material of tragedy. Some seek refuge from the rough and tumble of public life in the sanctuary of their own private virtue. Such men, however, are compelled to seal their lips and shut their eyes to the injustice around them. Only at the cost of self-deception can they keep themselves pure from the defilements incurred by responsible action. For all that they achieve, that which they leave undone, will still torment their peace of mind. They will either go to pieces in face of this disquiet, or develop into the most hypocritical of all Pharisees. Who stands his ground? Only the man whose final standard is not his reason, his principles, his conscience, his freedom, or his virtue, but who is ready to sacrifice all this when he is called to obedient and responsible action in faith and in exclusive allegiance to God. The responsible man, who tries to make his whole life an answer to the question and call of God. Where are these responsible people?